never thought someone's gaze could make me question everything, until I felt it. My name is Emma, a 25-year-old newbie at a bustling New York marketing firm. I landed this job 3 weeks ago, and already, the hum of fluorescent lights and the sharp scent of fresh coffee feel like home. But it's not the work that keeps me on edge. It's him. My boss, Liam, is the kind of man who commands a room without trying. Tall, with dark hair that falls just slightly out of place, and a smile that could thaw the iciest resolve. He's everything you'd picture in a leader. He's also married. I remind myself of that daily, but it doesn't stop the pull I feel every time he's near. Today's no different. I'm at my desk, fingers hovering over my keyboard, pretending to focus on a client pitch. The office buzzes around me, phones ringing, printers whirring, the occasional laugh cutting through the air. Zoe, my coworker and lifeline in this chaos, sits beside me, her blonde curls bouncing as she leans over. She's the type who knows everyone's secrets before they do, and she's been my anchor since day one. Emma, you see the new project Liam's spearheading? Zoe says, snapping me out of my haze. It's a beast. Big client, tight deadline. Think we'll survive? I force a smile, tucking a strand of my brown hair behind my ear. Yeah, I heard. Let's hope we can wow him. Wowing him is the least of my worries. Truth is, I can't stop thinking about him. Every time Liam walks by, his crisp button-down shifting with each step, his voice low and steady as he talks to someone on the phone, my pulse races. I know it's wrong. He's off limits, a line I shouldn't even dream of crossing. But that forbidden edge only makes it harder to look away. This afternoon, though, something shifted. I stayed late, chasing a deadline on a report that's due tomorrow. The office had emptied out, leaving behind an eerie quiet. The lights dimmed, casting long shadows across the rows of desks. Only one other person remained. Liam. His office door was cracked open, a sliver of warm light spilling into the hall. I could hear the faint scratch of his pen, the occasional rustle of papers. I told myself to focus, to finish and get out, but my eyes kept drifting toward that glow. Then it happened. A chill prickled up my spine, sharp and sudden, like I wasn't alone. I glanced around. Nothing but empty chairs and dark monitors. My imagination, I thought, shaking it off. But when I looked up again, there he was. Liam, standing in his doorway, watching me. His eyes locked on mine, intense and unreadable, pinning me in place. My breath caught, heat flooding my cheeks. For a split second, I swore he smirked, just a flicker, before he turned back to his desk like nothing happened. I sat there, frozen, my laptop screen blurring in front of me. What was that? Had he been watching me the whole time? Or was I losing it, spinning nothing into something because I wanted it to mean more? My mind raced, replaying that look, that tiny curve of his lips. It wasn't just my imagination. I felt it, that spark, that pull. Something was stirring, something dangerous and electric, and I didn't know if I could stop it. The clock ticked past 8 p.m., but I couldn't move. Part of me wanted to pack up and run, to shove these feelings down where they belonged. The other part, the reckless part, wanted to linger, to see if he'd look again. I stole a glance at his office. The door was still ajar, the light still on. He was still there, and then, as if he sensed me, he stepped into the hall. Not toward me, not yet. Just standing there, silhouetted against the glow. His head tilted slightly. My heart slammed against my ribs. He didn't say a word, didn't need to. The air between us thickened, heavy with questions I couldn't ask and answers I wasn't ready for. I don't know what's happening or where this is going. All I know is that tonight something changed. Someone was watching me from the dark, and and I think I wanted it to be him. Want to know what happens next? Stick around. The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach, replaying last night's encounter in my mind. Had I imagined the intensity in Liam's gaze? Or was there something more? Something unspoken but undeniable? I shook off the thought, trying to focus on the day ahead. But as I stepped into the office, the air felt different, charged with a tension I couldn't ignore. Zoe greeted me with her usual bright smile, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. "Morning, Emma. Ready to tackle that pitch?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, let's do this." But my focus was shot. Every time Liam walked by, my heart skipped a beat. He didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge me in any way, which only made it worse. Was he pretending nothing happened? Or had I misread everything? The day dragged on, a blur of meetings and emails, until late afternoon when Liam called an impromptu team huddle. We gathered in the conference room, the glass walls offering a view of the bustling city outside. Liam stood at the head of the table, his presence commanding as always. "Great work on the initial drafts," he said, his voice smooth and steady. "But we need to push harder. The client's expectations are high, and we can't afford to miss the mark." His eyes swept, the room landing on each of us briefly, except me. He skipped over me like I wasn't even there. My stomach twisted. Was he avoiding me on purpose? As the meeting wrapped up, everyone filed out, but I lingered, pretending to organize my notes. Liam stayed behind too, his back to me as he gathered his papers. The room was silent, the only sound the faint hum of the air conditioning. I should have left. I should have walked out and let it go. But something kept me rooted in place. "Emma," he said suddenly, his voice low. I jumped, startled. He turned to face me, his expression unreadable. "You've been quiet today. Everything all right?" My mouth went dry. "Yeah, just focused on the project." He nodded, but his eyes lingered on mine a second too long. "Good. We need everyone at their best." There it was again. That spark. That unspoken something. I could feel it, and I knew he could too. But before I could say anything, he turned and walked out, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts. The rest of the week was a blur of late nights and mounting tension. I threw myself into work, trying to drown out the thoughts of Liam, but it was impossible. Every time I saw him, every time he spoke, I felt that pull stronger than before. Then, on Friday, everything changed. It was after hours again, the office nearly empty. I was finalizing the pitch deck when Zoe popped her head into my cubicle. "Hey, a few of us are grabbing drinks at O'Malley's. You in?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to go, to unwind and forget about Liam for a night. But another part, the reckless part, wanted to stay, to see if he'd be here too. "I think I'll pass," I said, offering a weak smile. "Still have some work to finish." Zoe raised an eyebrow. "You sure? You've been working like crazy. You need a break." "I'm good, really. Maybe next time." She shrugged and left, leaving me alone in the quiet office. I tried to focus on the deck, but my mind kept drifting. What was I doing? Why was I staying behind, hoping for something that couldn't happen? Then I heard it, the soft click of a door closing. I looked up and saw Liam stepping out of his office, his coat slung over his arm. He paused when he saw me, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Still here?" he asked, his tone casual but with an edge I couldn't place. "Yeah, just wrapping up," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. He nodded, then hesitated, like he wanted to say something else. Instead, he walked toward the elevator. I watched him go, disappointment settling in my chest. But just as the elevator doors opened, he stopped and turned back. "Emma, can I talk to you for a minute?" My heart leaped into my throat. Sure. He gestured for me to follow him back to his office. I stood, my legs shaky, and trailed behind him. The door closed softly behind us, sealing us in the dim light of his desk lamp. He leaned against his desk, crossing his arms. I've noticed you've been staying late a lot lately. I swallowed hard. Just trying to get everything done. Is that all? His gaze was intense, searching. I opened my mouth to respond, but the words caught in my throat. What was he asking? Did he know? Could he feel it too? Before I could answer, he stepped closer, closing the distance between us. My breath hitched as he reached out, his fingers brushing a stray lock of hair from my face. The touch was light, barely there, but it sent a shockwave through me. Emma, he murmured, his voice husky. We need to be careful. My pulse raced. Careful of what? He didn't answer. Instead, he leaned in, his lips hovering just inches from mine. I could feel his breath, warm and unsteady, mingling with mine. Every nerve in my body screamed to close the gap, to give in to the desire that had been building for weeks. But then, a noise shattered the moment. A soft creak from the hallway. Liam froze, his eyes snapping to the door. Did you hear that? I nodded, my heart pounding for a different reason now. Yeah. He stepped back, the spell broken. We're not alone, he whispered, his voice tense. I glanced toward the door, fear creeping up my spine. Someone was out there, watching us. But who? The door clicked shut behind us, but the tension in the air lingered, thick and suffocating. Liam stood frozen, his hand still hovering near my face, his eyes wide with alarm. The noise from the hallway, a soft creak, like a footstep, had shattered the moment, leaving us both on edge. Did you hear that? He whispered, his voice barely audible. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. Yeah. He stepped back, the warmth between us evaporating as quickly as it had ignited. His gaze darted to the door, then back to me. We're not alone, he said, his tone laced with urgency. I swallowed hard, fear creeping up my spine. Who could it be? The office was supposed to be empty. Zoe had left with the others for drinks, and the cleaning crew didn't come until later. My mind raced with possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. Liam moved toward the door, his steps cautious. He cracked it open, peering into the dimly lit hallway. I held my breath, straining to hear any sound, but there was nothing, just the faint hum of the air conditioning. He turned back to me, his brow furrowed. No one's there. I exhaled, but the relief was short-lived. The unease lingered, a nagging feeling that someone had been watching us, that our secret was no longer safe. We should go, Liam said, his voice tight. Separately, I'll leave first. I nodded, though every part of me wanted to stay, to finish what we'd started. But the moment was gone, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. He grabbed his coat and slipped out without another word, leaving me alone in his office. I waited a few minutes, my heart still racing, before gathering my things and heading out. The hallway was empty, the office silent, but I couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were on me, hidden in the shadows. Next day, the office felt different. Every glance from a coworker, every whisper, felt like an accusation. I tried to focus on my work, but my mind kept drifting back to last night. Who had been there? And did they see us? Zoe, usually my lifeline in the chaos, was acting strange. She barely spoke to me, her responses short and clipped. When I asked if she was okay, she forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Yeah, Just tired, she said, avoiding my gaze. I didn't believe her. Zoe was never this distant. Did she know something? Had she come back to the office last night and seen us? The thought made my stomach churn. Meanwhile, Liam was avoiding me altogether. He didn't look my way during the morning meeting, didn't acknowledge me when I passed him in the hall. His sudden coldness stung, leaving me feeling abandoned and confused. Was he regretting what almost happened? Or was he just scared? I couldn't take it anymore. During lunch, I cornered him in the break room, my frustration boiling over. "Why are you avoiding me?" I demanded, keeping my voice low. Liam glanced around, ensuring we were alone. "Emma, we can't do this," he said, his voice strained. "It's too risky. If anyone finds out..." "But no one knows," I insisted, stepping closer. "We can be careful." He shook his head, his jaw tight. "It's not just about being careful. I have a wife, Emma. I can't..." His words trailed off as I reached out, touching his arm. The electricity between us crackled, undeniable. For a moment, his resolve wavered, his eyes darkening with the same desire I felt. But then, the door swung open, and Zoe walked in, her face pale. "Emma, Liam, I need to talk to you both. Now." My heart stopped. The way she said it, the urgency in her voice sent a chill down my spine. She knew. She had to know. Liam stiffened beside me, his hand dropping from my arm. "What? Is it Zoe?" he asked, his tone carefully neutral. Zoe's eyes flicked between us, her expression unreadable. "Not here," she said, glancing over her shoulder. "In your office, Liam." We followed her in silence, the tension thick enough to choke on. Once inside, Zoe closed the door and turned to face us, her hands trembling slightly. "I saw you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Last night, I came back to grab my phone and I saw you too." My stomach dropped. So it was her. She had been the one watching us. Liam's face paled, but he kept his composure. "Zoe, it's not what you think." "Don't!" She cut him off, her eyes flashing with anger. "Don't lie to me. I saw the way you were looking at each other, and I'm not the only one who's noticed." "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice shaky. Zoe took a deep breath, her gaze shifting to me. "Aiden's been asking questions. He's been watching you, Emma. He knows something's going on." Aiden. The name sent a shiver through me. He was a coworker, charming and ambitious, but with a sharp edge that always made me uneasy. He'd been overly friendly lately, offering to help with my projects, but I'd brushed it off as networking. "What does he know?" Liam asked, his voice tight. "I don't know," Zoe admitted. "But he's been snooping around, asking about your late nights, Emma. And he's not the type to let things go." My mind raced. If Aiden suspected something, it was only a matter of time before he dug deeper. And if he found out the truth, it could ruin everything. Not just for me, but for Liam too. "What do we do?" I whispered, fear clawing at my throat. Zoe looked between us, her expression softening slightly. "I don't know. But you need to be careful. If this gets out, it won't just be your jobs on the line." Liam nodded, his face grim. "Thank you for telling us, Zoe." She gave a curt nod, then turned to leave. But before she did, she paused, her hand on the doorknob. "Just think about what you're doing, both of you." With that, she slipped out, leaving Liam and me alone in the heavy silence. I turned, to him, my heart aching. What now? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he ran a hand through his hair, his eyes distant. "I don't know, Emma, but Zoe's right. We're playing with fire." I wanted to argue, to tell him that what we had was worth the risk. but the words stuck in my throat. Because deep down, I knew he was right. This wasn't just about us anymore. There were other people involved, other lives that could be shattered. But even as I thought it, I couldn't ignore the pull between us, the magnetic force that drew me to him despite the danger. And then, as if sensing my turmoil, Liam stepped closer, his hand cupping my cheek. "I don't want to stop," he murmured, his voice raw. "But I don't know how to keep going without destroying everything." I leaned into his touch, my resolve crumbling. Neither do I. Just as our lips were about to meet, a sharp knock sounded at the door. We sprang apart, my heart leaping into my throat. "Liam?" A voice called from the other side. It was Aiden. Panic surged through me. What did he want? Had he been listening? Liam shot me a warning look, then called out, "Come in." The door opened, and Aiden stepped inside, his eyes flicking between us with a knowing smile. "Am I interrupting something?" Aiden's smile was sharp, his eyes gleaming with something I couldn't quite place. Curiosity maybe, or something darker. He leaned casually against the doorframe, his gaze flicking between Liam and me like a predator sizing up its prey. "Am I interrupting something?" he repeated, his tone light but laced with insinuation. Liam cleared his throat, stepping forward, to block Aiden's view of me. "Not at all. We were just discussing the project." Aiden's smile didn't waver. The project. Right. I've been meaning to talk to you about that, Emma. You've been putting in a lot of late nights lately. Impressive dedication." I forced a smile, my stomach twisting. "Just trying to get it right." He nodded, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Well, if you ever need help, you know where to find me." There was something in his voice, a hint of a threat, that made my skin crawl. I glanced at Liam, who was watching Aiden with a carefully neutral expression. "Thanks." "Aiden," Liam said, his tone dismissive. "We'll keep that in mind." Aiden lingered for a moment longer, his gaze lingering on me, before he finally turned and left, the door clicking shut behind him. The silence that followed was suffocating. I turned to Liam, my heart racing. He knows, doesn't he? Liam ran a hand through his hair, his jaw tight. Maybe. Or he's fishing. Either way, we need to be careful. But careful wasn't enough anymore. The walls were closing in, and I could feel the weight of our secret pressing down on me. I couldn't keep doing this, sneaking around, lying, pretending. It was tearing me apart. "I can't do this," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I can't keep pretending nothing's happening between us." Liam's eyes softened, and he stepped closer, his hand reaching for mine. "Emma, But before he could finish, the door burst open again. This time it was Zoe, her face pale and frantic. "Emma, Liam, you need to come with me. Now." My heart stopped. "What's wrong?" Zoe didn't answer. She just grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the door. Liam followed, his expression grim. We hurried down the hall, the office eerily quiet. Zoe led us to the break room, where a small group of coworkers had gathered, their faces tense. In the center of the room stood a woman I didn't recognize. Tall, with sharp features and an air of authority. "Who's that?" I whispered to Zoe. "HR," she replied, her voice tight. "She's here to investigate a complaint." My blood ran cold. A complaint? About what? The HR woman, Ms. Carter according to her badge, cleared her throat, her gaze sweeping the room. "I'm here to address a serious matter. We've received an anonymous report of inappropriate conduct within this department." A murmur rippled through the group, but I couldn't hear it over the pounding in my ears. Inappropriate conduct. Did she mean us? Had someone reported Liam and me? Ms. Carter continued, Her voice clipped. We take these allegations very seriously. I'll be conducting interviews with each of you over the next few days. Please cooperate fully. My knees felt weak. This couldn't be happening. I glanced at Liam, but his face was a mask, unreadable. As the group dispersed, Zoe pulled me aside, her eyes wide with worry. Emma, what if it's about you and Liam? I shook my head, panic rising in my throat. I don't know. Maybe it's something else. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Aiden's smug smile, Zoe's warning, it all pointed to one thing. Someone had found out, and now, everything was about to unravel. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every mistake. I'd known from the start that this was dangerous, that it could cost me everything. But I hadn't listened to that voice of reason. I'd let myself fall, and now, I was paying the price. The next day, the office was a minefield. Whispers followed, me everywhere, eyes tracking my every move. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like everyone knew my secret. Then, the call came. Ms. Carter wanted to see me. I walked into the conference room, my heart pounding. She sat at the table, a stack of papers. In front of her, her expression stern. Emma, please have a seat. I did, my hands trembling in my lap. I'll get straight to the point, she said, her voice cold. We've received a report that you've been involved in an inappropriate relationship with a superior. Is this true? The world tilted. I opened my mouth to deny it, to lie, but the words wouldn't come. Because it was true. I had crossed that line. And now, there was no going back. Before I could respond, the door opened, and Liam stepped in, his face pale but determined. It's not her fault, he said, his voice steady. It's mine. I'm the one who initiated. Ms. Carter's eyes widened slightly, but she quickly regained her composure. Mr. Daniels, this is highly irregular. I know, he said, stepping forward. But I won't let Emma take the fall for this. If anyone should be held accountable, it's me. I stared at him, my heart aching. He was trying to protect me, to save me from the consequences of our actions. But it was too late. The damage was done. Ms. Carter sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. This is a mess. Both of you will be suspended pending further investigation. And, Mr. Daniels, given your position, this could have serious repercussions. Liam nodded, his jaw tight. I understand. As we left the room, the weight of what had just happened settled over me like a shroud. My career, my reputation, everything I'd worked for was in jeopardy. And for what? A fleeting moment of passion that could never be more? But as I looked at Liam, standing beside me, his hand brushing mine in a silent show of support, I realized that maybe it wasn't just a moment. Maybe, despite everything, it was something real. In the days that followed, the investigation unfolded, and the truth came out. Aiden had been the one to report us, his jealousy and ambition driving him to expose our secret. But in the end, it didn't matter. The damage was done. Liam was demoted, his marriage strained to the breaking point. I was given a formal warning, my future at the company uncertain. The office was a battleground of gossip and judgment, and I knew I couldn't stay. So, I made the hardest decision of my life. I quit. On my last day, as I packed up my desk, Liam found me. His eyes were tired, but there was a softness in them that made my heart ache. I'm sorry, he said, his voice rough, for everything. I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. It's not your fault. We both knew the risks. He stepped closer, his hand reaching for mine. I don't regret it, Emma. Not a single moment. I looked up at him, my heart breaking. Neither do I. But as I walked out of the office for the last time, I couldn't help but wonder, what if we'd never crossed that line? What if we'd stayed on the safe side of temptation? Maybe things would have been different. Maybe I'd still have my job, my reputation. But then again, maybe I'd never have known what it felt like to truly want something, to feel alive in a way I never had before. In the end, I don't know if it was worth it. All I know is that some secrets are too heavy to carry, and some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. So what would you have done? Would you have taken the risk? Or walked away?